Hello everyone, and welcome to another coffee break talk. This time I would like to show you some of the beautiful plants that grow in the Darling range in Western Australia in the Ellis Brook Reserve. Now, the Darling Fault runs north-south for over 1,000 kilometres from the east of Shark Bay to Albany, and it's such a major feature of the Earth's landscape that it can clearly be seen from space. The highest point is Mount Cook, and that has an elevation of just over 580 metres. And the Ellis Brook Reserve is situated slightly to the southeast of Perth, near the town of Brookton, which you can see on the map on the right-hand side. And this is the Ellis Brook Valley, and in the centre there is a car park, and that's where you normally start. The Ellis Brook Reserve, though, it's renowned for the richness of both its flora and fauna, and it contains over 500 species of flowering plants. From the car park, it's possible to walk to the 60-foot falls. That's in the bottom southeast corner. And there's also a nice trail beside the Ellis Brook, which we're going to follow in this talk, and that's marked in blue, heading towards the northwest of the map. Now, the Ellis Brook isn't a permanent stream. It only flows in the winter and early spring. That's from June to October. And when you get out of your vehicle in the car park, this is probably one of the first plants that you may see. It's a member of the iris family, and it's endemic to Western Australia. It forms rush-like clumps, and although the flowers only last for one day, they are produced in quite a profusion, so you get quite a long flowering season and see lots of flowers. Another plant around the car park is this very unusual Grevillea, Grevillea bipinnatifida. Now, the tubular flowers split as the stamens mature in order to release the style. And you might like to know a little bit about how Grevillea got its name. It's named after Charles Francis Greville. He lived from 1749 to 1809, and he was the second son of the Earl of Warwick, a close friend of Sir Joseph Banks, and a founder member of the RHS, before it was actually called the RHS. As a young man, he had a very beautiful mistress called Emma Hart. But after a few years, he decided he could no longer afford to keep her, and he sent her to stay with his uncle, a diplomat in Italy. When Emma realised that Charles wasn't going to take her back, she married his uncle, who was Lord Hamilton, and of course, as Lady Hamilton, she achieved long-lasting fame as the lover of Lord Horatio Nelson. Now, Malaleuca parviceps is one of the shrubs that grow in the Ellis Brook Reserve. It's one of several members of the myrtle family that are there, and it's known as the rough honey myrtle. It's got short magenta pink flower spikes, and like many members of the myrtle family, of course, it's the numerous brightly coloured and conspicuous stamens which make the flower so attractive. Another Malaleuca, known as the graceful honey myrtle, makes quite a large spreading shrub. This grows in fact to a height of 5 meters, and it has violet flower spikes in the late winter from July to September. Each flower has 5 bundles of stamens around it, and each of those bundles has 30 to 90 stamens within it, which is what gives the spike its fluffy appearance. The leaves are also aromatic because they've got oil glands on the lower surface. Now, a rather unusual plant which you find in the Ellis Brook Reserve is this Conostylis aurea. The leaves are strap-like, and the flowers occur in clusters on stalks, which arise right from the base of the leaves. There are 6 tepals and 6 stamens, and it's endemic to Western Australia. It's in the bloodwort family, that's Hemorrhoidaceae. There are also daisies, and this of course is one of the everlasting daisies, which has these very showy papery bracts. A very attractive plant is this Agrostocrinum scabrum. It's known as the blue grass lily, and it grows on clay soils and granites in what is termed jarrah forest. Now that's forest where Eucalyptus marginata is the dominant tree. And this bluegrass lily grows to a height of about 60 centimeters, and the flowers, as you can see, are dark blue with black anthers. A rather pretty shrub is Thomasia macrocarpa. It makes quite an erect, dense shrub to a height of about 2 meters, and it's covered, as you can see, in hairs on the leaves, on the stems, on the backs of the petals, and on the calyces. And these are known as stellate hairs, that is, hairs that are in a star-like formation. The Ellis Brook Reserve, though, is known almost for its stylidiums. It has several species, and stylidiums are known as trigger plants. That's because the stamens and the style are fused at the tip of a reflexed column. And when visiting insects land on the column, they cause it to spring and deposit or remove pollen from the back of the insect. Now, another member of the myrtle family is a Verticordia. This is Verticordia insignis, subspecies insignis, and it bears scented, relatively large pink or pink and white flowers in rounded corymbs on the ends of its branches in spring. And you can see there the type of habitat again in the Ellis Brook Reserve. You're in the sort of bush where these plants flourish. A slightly more unusual member of the myrtle family is the Calytrix, the pink starflower. This particular one is semi-prostrate, and it blooms between August and December. And although it is a member of the myrtle family, of course, it doesn't have quite the profusion of stamens which some of the other members of the myrtle family do have. This is a lovely plant, I think. It gently scrambles through other shrubs. It's not a very tall climber. It just scrambles a little bit, and it's known as the fringed lily, which is a very apt name for it. You can see the beautiful fringes on the edges of the petals. Isopogons, in this case Isopogon dubius, it's known as the pincushion coneflower, and the leaves are deeply three-lobed, but they're often divided again 2 or 3 times, again into threes, which makes it appear a very dissected leaf. And the flowers are arranged in sessile, that's stalkless, almost spherical heads. This is one of the claw flowers, Calothamnos rupestris, and its red or pink flowers emerge in a tuft from a grey hairy calyx on one side of a branch. The needle-like leaves are clustered around the apex of a branch, and it makes a moderately sized shrub up to about 3 meters in height. And the flowers have 4 hairy sepals, as we've seen, 4 petals, and 4 claws of scarlet stamens, which is what gives it its common name. Another claw flower is Calothamnos sanguineus. That's slightly lower than Calothamnos rupestris, and again these bright red flowers have 4 sepals, petals, and claw-like bundles of stamens. But unlike Calothamnos rupestris, in this particular species, the upper 2 stamens, bundles of stamens that is, are fused for much of their length, and they're longer and broader than the lower 2 bundles, which makes the plant look as though it really only has 2 claws. Now, believe it or not, this is also a member of the myrtle family, but it's a very graceful shrub with these long arching stems bearing clusters of white or white and dark pink flowers, again between June and October. And even this plant is a myrtle. It's known as the lemon-scented myrtle, and it makes quite an attractive small shrub, about 1 meter to 1.5 meters in height, with pairs of spear-shaped lemon-scented leaves, because again, they've got oil glands on the lower leaf surfaces, and then it has these flame-coloured flowers. Now, you might think that it's called after Charles Darwin, but it isn't. It was actually named after his grandfather, Erasmus. Now, as you progress along the trail and you get towards a point where there's a little bridge crossing the Ellis Brook itself, you come across this beautiful yellow-eyed flame pea, which is the common name of Chorizema's dicksonii. It's, again, a shrub, a small shrub, only about 1 metre in height, and these red and orange flowers are arranged in loose spike-like racemes on the ends of branches. Hulganias are in the borage family, and it has a very hairy stem, as well as hairy calyces and leaves. And the flowers are a beautiful sort of dark blue. The 5 stamens have long yellow anthers. Now, you may be familiar with sundews, and here are several of them, because 3 in fact, because Australia has a huge number. It has several hundred species of Drosera, and they're often quite large. We're used in the UK to Droseras or to sundews being very tiny, but oh no, they're not in Australia. Now, Drosera glandulifera is known as the pimpernel sundew, or the scarlet sundew. It's an annual. It grows in the winter and then flowers from August through to November. And it's got 15 or 20 concave, spatulate or spoon-shaped leaves, which are arranged in a convex to nearly flat rosette. Each leaf is covered with touch-sensitive glandular tentacles. There are sticky tentacles at the center and snap tentacles at the edge, and you can see the spines in that bottom left-hand picture. When triggered, the snap tentacles catapult insects into the center of the leaf, where the sticky tentacles draw their prey into the concave depression over a period of about 2 minutes, which must seem a very long time to the insect, after which the plant starts to digest it. And it does bear small flowers, which are orange. Now, Drosera erythrorhiza, known as the red ink sundew, is a perennial species. Again, of course, it's carnivorous, and its inflorescences can contain up to 50 white flowers. Drosera stolonifera on the right-hand side is also perennial, and that likes to grow in really peaty, waterlogged soils in swamps. It flowers in spring from September to October, and like a lot of orchids in Western Australia, it flowers particularly well when there's been a bushfire the previous summer. Now, up to now, I haven't shown you any members of the Protea family, but this, of course, is one of them, Dryandra lindleyana. It makes a sort of low, sprawling shrub up to about 50 centimetres in height, and it was named after John Lindley, who lived from 1799 to 1865, and he, of course, was a prominent 19th century English botanist, whom the name of the RHS Lindley Library commemorates. But in fact, he named many Australian plants. This shrub is reasonably widespread. It's got sessile, orange, tan, yellow, or even pink flowers, which have a distinctive cup-shape appearance before the styles straighten, and it's known as the couch honeypot. Now, a very different looking member of the Proteaceae is Patersonia, and here we've got 2 species. Patersonia biloba has pinnate, sharply pointed leaves, and these oval heads of grey and pink flowers, which is quite an unusual flower colour to have. Patersonia striata, though, is a prostrate shrub. Again, it's got pinnate sharply pointed leaves, but they're also striated, which gives it its name, and these heads of silky, hairy, creamy yellow flowers. Hibbertia subvaginata is an erect shrub, grows up to a height of about 120 centimeters, and these yellow flowers have their stamens arranged around 3 or 4 carpels. And this has a very long flowering period. It starts flowering in July and it carries on right through to December. The leaves have wedge-shaped tips and they're sheathed at the base. Now, I've saved until last 2 orchids which you find in the Ellis Brook range. On the left-hand picture, we've got Caladinia footiana, the crimson spider orchid. Now, this has a white, red-striped labellum or lip, which has 2 rows of reddish calli, as they're called, lumps on the back of the throat. The dorsal sepal is erect, and then the lateral sepals are held stiffly outwards before being allowed to drop down. On the right-hand side, we've got the cowslip orchids. These have short spreading sepals and petals, and I think they're one of the most beautiful orchids that you can come across in Western Australia. It's quite a widespread species. It extends all the way from Kalbarri down to the south coast, and it comes in different forms, but they all have yellow petals, but the markings are often different, different amounts of spots and stripes and that sort of thing. But now I'm afraid we've reached the end of the talk. I'm leaving you with a view of the Ellis Brook Reserve from the boardwalk which goes over the Ellis Brook itself. And again, you see the bush-like habitat with eucalyptus trees as well. So thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this talk.